Well, good afternoon and welcome once again to Ed's Orchids. Glad you could join me. Now, I think we're going to have a look today at paphiopedilums, multiflorals, really. But what I'm going to say about the makeup of them and what you do with them and how you keep them, it'll go for the small paphiopedilums as well. But today, the multiflorals. Now, these are from the subgenus in that group of the Polyantha group, which includes famous multiflorals such as Rochodianum, Sandrianum, and the plants originate in the Far East, and the Ross and Sandrianums, which are the king and queen of paphiopedilums, all seem to be collected in one area. In Borneo, which is near the Kinabalu mountain, and I cannot prove a fact, but it seems like the area in which these grow contains large amounts of magnesium, so an addition of Epsom salts to their feed wouldn't be wasted. There have been many made crosses, especially with Rochodianum and Sandrianum, but most with other sequential paths which have produced many beautiful hybrids. Now, for instance, we've got this one in front of us, which is a Prince Edward of York, which is a cross between Rochodianum and Sandrianum, and it produces wonderful blooms of, relating to both of the two species. Now, this one I've grown from a very, very small growth off the mother plant. The mother plant died about 4 years ago and left me with a little tiny little growth that I thought I couldn't grow, but this is what it's like now. And this should bloom probably within the next 12 months, hopefully. I mean, you can virtually tell when these types of plants are going to bloom, because they start coming up with a leaf in the middle that's might look a little bit discoloured, but from here they start swelling. So once they start getting fat there, they're getting ready for blooming. Now, this one is a St. Swithin, and it's a cross between Rochodianum and Philippinense. Now, I bought this as a two-growth plant. It wasn't as big as that, but it must have been 7-8 months ago, and it had done absolutely nothing. But lately, it's just showing signs of putting new growths up and new leaves up in each of the two growths. So hopefully that's on its way to making a nice decent plant, and that should flower. Well, you never know. Sometimes they flower when you least expect them. That's what most of the paphiopedilums do. But this should flower in the next couple of years. That's Philippinense St. Swithin. Now, this is a plant of Paphiopedilum Berenice, and it's a gorgeous looking plant, this one. Very, very slow growing, but doing okay, and putting up some nice small new growths around the bottom. So I'm quite happy with this one. And it's one of those crosses that doesn't include Rochodianum or Sandrianum. It's been developed, well, I think it was some 40 years ago, between Philippinense and Lowii. And this is doing very nicely. And I have it hung high in the greenhouse, this one, because of the Philippinense crossing it. Because Philippinense, they can stand quite a bit of sun. You know, when they get them from the wild, the Philippinense, if there's any still being brought from the wild, The leaves are very, very yellow and ragged, and sort of had plenty of sunburn on them. But since they've been in this country and they've been bred and bred and bred, the leaves have gone much of a nice green colour. So that one's Paphiopedilum Berenice, cross between Philippinense and Lowii. And this has got two nice new growths coming up and a new leaf. If I close in on it. Just turn it down a bit. There we are. Two nice new growths and a new leaf coming up. Now this one, and it's the last one I'm going to show you, is the Lady Isabel. And this is another beautiful, beautiful plant. And it's a cross between Paphiopedilum stonii and Rothschildianum. Now, I remember some months ago I did a video on how it got the name Lady Isabel. And it's quite interesting. So, if you think you might be interested to see how it got that name, you can just look back on my channels and you'll find it. It's interesting and does have connections to the North of England Orchid Society, of which I'm a treasurer. And I'm so proud that this is the oldest society in the world and was formed in 1897. That is Lady Isabel. Well, you might be wondering why I've got these sticks in. Some of you'll know, because if you know, they don't like to dry out, these Paphiopedilums, especially the multiflorals. And with having the stick in, it's a little bamboo skewer. You can just test if it needs watering or not by pulling it out of the pot, just touching it to your lips, and if it's wet, it doesn't need watering. That is an easy way to check. It's an easy way to check on any orchid plant, for that matter. Well, I've shown you the 4 plants now, so I should be telling you how I keep them. So we'll have a look. And we'll start off with the Rothschildianum part of them. Well, these are not too difficult to grow, but like all paphs, they are very slow growing. And if grown from a flask, or possibly a seedling size, it can take 15 years to show some blooms. But as I said just a bit ago, they're not difficult, but they will not bloom unless they are a mature plant, which hasn't been divided for a few years. This will more likely apply to all multiflorals, so patience with multiflorals is a definite virtue. And then we come to how do we give the light to them. Well, they need fairly strong light, but depending on where you live in the world, I can't tell you how bright that should be. For example, where I live, a bright light here may correspond to a medium light in other parts of the world. So you'll have to work that one out for yourselves, depending on the whereabouts where you live. The one thing you should avoid, however, is direct sun for any length of time. And try to give your plant good filtered light. Now, as far as heat goes, coming from where they do, it's no surprise that they like it warm in general, with temperatures in the high 80s, in summer months with lows in the mid 60s, and in winter months I'd give them a temperature probably in the 70s if you can manage it, but with no with a minimum temperature in the low 50s, and they'll survive on that. Now, the compost we use. Was with all paphs, the compost you use should be very light and free draining. As you know, these plants live in humus on the forest floors and never enter the soil. And for this reason, you should treat them all as epiphytes. And epiphytes are plants as we all know, grow on other plants, but they don't obtain any nutrition from them. In the compost they will take a small amount of sphagnum or live moss, if you've got it, included in the medium to help keep the compost damp. And the medium to large bark, depending on the size of your plants, along with some large perlite or a bit of styrofoam chippings, should be ideal. Now as for watering, this is a bit of a subject on paphiopedilums, so it'll all depends on your own personal tastes and where you live and one thing and another, but they require continuous moisture around their roots and not wetness, and they should never be allowed to dry out. So all I can say about watering, although I never use tap water because all the chemicals in it is to make it suitable for human consumption, and which will go down well with paphiopedilums. So please use either rainwater or reverse osmosis water, which are the two best mediums. And then we come to fertilizer. Well, paphiopedilums are in the whole low feeders. But any prepared food you buy, no matter what make it is, always give it in sort of a half dose, probably, well, you could give it every watering, but every third or fourth watering, give it a good flush through to remove any salts that, well, the multiflorals don't like salts continually around the roots, so they need a good flushing. Now a lot of people say you should give calcium, well that's a debatable point. I mean, if you read books, some of them tell us that the paths are terrestrial or they're lithotype, growing on limestone rocks. But this isn't the case. They may seem to be growing on limestone rocks, but they will not obtain any calcium from them because the plants grow in mossy plants between limestone rocks and cannot get calcium from them because the limestone is only soluble in cold water. And adding calcium to the medium will only raise the pH of the compost. So I can't tell you much about that, you just have to experiment to see how your plants are growing on. But I know if you listen to a lot of channels on slipper orchids, they will tell you different. So you have to make your mind up on these one way or another. So that's about all I can tell you about multiflorals and paphiopedilums in general. So thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later. And well,